Packing 5 cameras onto a phone spec might seem like overkill because it is. In the case of the new Nokia 9 though, there is a distinct method to this madness. All of these cameras effectively act as one, and in some ways, 5 cameras are definitely better than 1, or 3 for that matter. Before we go any further though, you should know this. The Nokia 9 is not the right smartphone for everyone. It's a tool meant mostly for people who really care about photography, and it's going to be released in limited quantities too. While its appeal is about as niche as it gets, the Nokia 9 is nothing if not fascinating. But first, the basics. We're working with a 5.99-inch POLED display running at 2K, and one of last year's Snapdragon 845 chipsets, plus 6 gigs of RAM and 128 gigs of storage. There's a fingerprint sensor baked into that display too, which I honestly didn't get much of a chance to test. If this were any other phone, I'd probably spend a little more time on these specs, but if I'm honest, they just might be the least interesting things about the Nokia 9. So, about those cameras. All 5 are 12 megapixel sensors, but only 2 of them shoot in color. The rest are monochrome cameras meant to give you photos with boosted contrast and detail. You can't just use one of the cameras either. Unless you're shooting in monochrome, they're all working all the time. The way these cameras work together is kind of like HDR, but instead of having one camera stitching together multiple exposures, the phone combines image data from each of the 5 cameras to produce ostensibly a better photo. That is, to be clear, a lot of data too. We're talking between 60 and 240 megapixels of data, all of which gets churned into a single file. That might sound familiar if you're a fan of weird cameras, because a company called Light built a camera based on the same principle a few years ago, and it brought some of that image processing expertise to the 9. It shows, too. The images I shot with the Nokia 9 were surprisingly detailed, to the point where I honestly kind of got tired of seeing my own pores. We were shooting on a pretty dreary day, but I was generally pretty impressed with most of my shots. Aside from stitching that image data together, the Nokia 9 didn't seem to tune colors for an extra dose of pop. While that usually makes for more exciting photos, the photos I got with the 9 nearly all looked true to life. The other benefit of having all of these cameras is that together they produce a much more sophisticated depth map of the subject and whatever's behind it. When you go to edit the photos after the fact, you have options to very minutely tweak the level of bokeh in the foreground and the background. And in my brief time with the phone at least, the 9 did a really good job of keeping what's in the foreground looking nice and sharp. No matter what I was shooting, I didn't notice much shutter lag either. I mean, you can keep snapping away very quickly, and since the photos are processed in the background, you'll never really notice a difference in speed. That's a good thing too, because the process can take a while. The software is not complete yet, so it often took 5 to 6 seconds to spit out a final file. If you're shooting in depth mode, that number can get even bigger. Some photos took more than 10 seconds to process. Nokia says its final software should work much faster, but I guess we'll see. Since this is a phone for people who really care about photography, you can also save all of those images as RAW files, and a partnership with Lightroom means you'll have special Nokia 9 specific lens profiles to help fine-tune those shots. That extra software can't fix my biggest pet peeve so far though, the camera app itself. All of the controls here take a lot of time to get used to, and it's pretty clear the version of the Nokia 9 I played with just wasn't ready for actual people yet. I hope that changes soon. The Nokia 9 represents a fascinating step forward in the field of smartphone photography, and if all goes well with this phone, you can believe HMD Global wants its other phones to use it too. Who knows, we just might be looking at the future of the smartphone camera experience right now. It just needs a bit of polish first.